The team sheets are finally in, guys. Game 1 kicks off tomorrow. The series is about to start. I couldn't be more excited. It's time to roll that intro. Let's go. Kia ora everyone, my name's Zach. I love rugby. Welcome back to Hakatime Rugby. So as I mentioned, guys, team sheets are in. So right here, I've got both squads named, Ireland and the Maori All Blacks. And I want to spend this time just previewing the match, but going through the teams in a little bit more detail, giving you my observations of where the strengths lie for both squads, where there are potential opportunities for teams to expose weaknesses as part of the selections that they've made, and just generally how I see this game playing out. I have highlighted players that were involved in the last match between Ireland and New Zealand late last year, where Ireland got the victory ultimately. And what you can see right off the bat is there is a lot more experience here, I guess, in the Irish side than there is in the Maori All Blacks squad, purely at the international level, I think is what is highlighted here. Notably, a lot of those caps are coming in off the bench, so the likes of Cian Healy, Conan, Murray Carberry for Ireland. These are players that have been around for some time, so I think what Ireland has really tried to position here is a good mix of, exciting youth that are pushing their case at club level that may not get as much international exposure, while carrying highly experienced people on the bench that you can bring in to either turn the game or press an advantage with that experience if required later in the game. On the Maori All Blacks side, obviously named at captain Brad Weber and TJ Perenara, so a lot of experience there in a pivotal role, I think, to help drive the ship around for the Maori All Blacks. And a lot of these players have been involved in the Maori All Blacks setup for some time, playing internationals against various teams, obviously at second tier level or slightly below, but being able to get that experience of playing at a higher level rather than just sort of club rugby experience. So I think in terms of overall experience, obviously Ireland has the edge, but the Maori All Blacks are able to bring a level of experience slightly above club rugby that I think will serve them really well in this match. I touched on the co-captaincy for the Maori All Blacks with Brad Weber and TJ Perenara. I think that's a great move. A lot is being made of TJ Perenara being on the bench, but I think this gives an opportunity for, a real 1-2 punch consistently throughout the 80 minutes of the match. They will definitely use both players in rotation, and given it's a 23-man game now, generally in international rugby, I don't think anything's lost or we can read too much into the fact that TJ Perenara is coming in off the bench. On the flip side, Bundy Aki is the captain of the Irish team and highly experienced player, as we all know. Great inside centre, one of the best running around in the world, and he will bring his wealth of experience to, what is a really exciting young Irish team. So looking at the Irish forwards, so there are a few names that I just want to point out that have certainly stood out to me in their recent performances. So O'Toole is a name that, Tom O'Toole is a name that I'd like to highlight first. So while he was part of teams that have lost to, some of the bigger South African teams, and there's been a lot made about the way to beat Irish squads is obviously physically in the forwards and at set piece. I thought largely he held his own against those South African forwards, and World Cup winning forwards. I think he really has held his own. So I think he will bring, good strength at the set piece time. Joe McCarthy is another player that I'd like to highlight. So really exciting guy. I think, an opportunity for him to show his skill sets at line-out time and in general play around the field. But I think where there is a real advantage here for Ireland that's very easy to see is in the back row. So it is at breakdown time, and it is with mobility and physicality of 6, 7, 8. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Cian Prendergast in action here. Ireland's backs I would describe as settled and dynamic. You've got the likes of Bundy Aki, we've touched on for his experience, Keith Earls, Jordan Lama. These are names Kiwi fans should be familiar with, obviously played at the top level for some time now, and should be able to bring that ability to game manage and at least right the ship where required based on their experience. And then you've got a mix of real excitement, and probably the player of the list that I'm looking most forward to seeing is Kieran Frawley. I'm looking forward to seeing him, in taking that next step up in terms of an Irish selection, but also on New Zealand soil. There's a lot of excitement around him. I think from what I've heard, all reports, I haven't seen a huge amount of him. He could have a real influence on this game and have real influence on potential Irish squads going into the future. So we get an opportunity to see just how good he is in a high pressure environment. And to the bench, guys, obviously highly experienced squad here coming in off the bench for Ireland. The name that I was most surprised to see on here is Jack Conan. I am expecting that he will play quite a significant role in the main team for Ireland. And when I look at his name here and we look at what is quite a condensed schedule for a 5-match tour, then this looks more like minutes management, as part of that 5-game tour that Andy Farrell will be looking to do. I'd expect him to make a lot of impact come game 2 and game 3. This gives an opportunity for real experience to come in off the bench, as well as to continue to press the advantage that I think that Ireland has in the back row and at the breakdown. When I look holistically at strengths here, so we've spoken about the bench. This is going to be an 80-minute grind, and Ireland are able to wheel in experienced players towards the end. That is definitely a strength of Ireland. When I look at the forwards, the breakdown is going to be highly competitive, and I think Ireland has the advantage there. The back line, they have a lot of experience here, game management abilities, particularly in inside centre. They have that ability to manage here with Bundy Aki. That's a real strength. And I think we might see them outperform, obviously, in the front row as well. So those are the areas of strength that I see for this team. And Maori All Blacks have got a lot of work to do if they want to compete in those areas. Now to the Maori All Blacks. Probably where I'm most excited for this team is actually in the tight 5. It's at set piece time. It's in the front row, the locks, and the rotation off the bench. So Ollie Norris is a player that has been talked about recently for All Black selection. It's probably a little bit early in terms of his experience, but this is another step forward for him for potentially being a name that all fans will be familiar in the future. Highly mobile, good with ball in hand, improving scrummager. So I think he's going to add a real impact to this game. Kurt Eklund outperformed for the Blues this year. They had a great season. He had a great season. Another very mobile forward. Tyrell Lomax has been part of the All Black squad for some time. So this is a very exciting front row. I think from a scrummaging perspective, they'll be able to hold their own, but where their real strengths lie is in mobility around the park. So that's something that Irish fans can expect. Josh Dixon there at lock is a name that I'd like to highlight because he has been talked about in All Black circles for some time. He's probably a little bit limited to take that next step, but this is an opportunity for him to press his name forward for future selection. So great in the line-out, really good player. Isaiah Walker-Leawere, so big human being, stands around 6'6", I think, 6'5", around 125 plus. So he'll bring a lot of physicality to this match. And I think, as I mentioned before, I see this as a real strength of the Maori All Blacks is the tight 5. When you add into it Tamaiti Williams, who was a 140 kg monster coming off the bench, who was recently showed up a number of All Blacks in that Super Rugby final, I think there's an opportunity here for this to be highly competitive at all areas of the set piece. To the back row, so the inclusion of Cullen Grace, I think, really improves things here for the Maori All Blacks. I still think Ireland has the edge in the back row, but Cullen Grace's physicality, his length, his abilities in the line-out as well, which we saw on display in the Super Rugby final, I think those are going to be real telling factors here. I actually think that we're going to see Cullen Grace as part of the All Blacks World Cup squad, and I also think he will be starting come World Cup time. That's just my prediction. I think he's an outstanding player, and I'm really got big raps on his abilities and his future projections. So he's a player that I would encourage everyone to look out for in this match. To the back line, so we spoke about Brad Weber. Obviously, we know about his experience and the expertise that he will bring to the game here. A couple of other players, Josh Ioane has found resurgent form, I think, this year for the Chiefs. So he's a player, great ball playing ability, great kicker in and around game management. So great to see him there. Connor Garden-Bachop on the wing, typically plays fullback, can play first 5. They've got him on the wing here, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. But again, he'll bring an ability to game manage during the game, which I think will be really important for the Maori All Blacks up against that Irish backline. I do see some weaknesses here in the midfield, so particularly with Bundy Aki there at inside centre, I think he's going to have an opportunity to really influence this game. So it's going to be a lot of pressure is going to go on Poihipi and Proctor, and we'll need to see them stand up in order to neutralise some of those strengths of Ireland. To the outside backs, though, so Stevenson, great player, tall, great under the high ball. Zahn Sullivan, another one who stands almost 2 meters tall. So he's another player that I would encourage people to look out for in this game. Very tall, very quick, ability to gameplay, good kick on him as well. So I think what we see here is they've really selected players who they think can neutralize the high ball, defend the high ball, and can game manage with the inclusion of Garden-Bachop. So I think it's going to be an exciting tussle should it descend into that sort of kicking duel between the two teams. So those are the teams, guys. Really exciting lineups. As I mentioned, highly experienced, a lot to look forward to. Just to recap where I see some of the strengths and opportunities. So from an Irish perspective, it's certainly in the back row and at the breakdown. In terms of game management, in the back line and obviously experience, Frawley could have a real impact on this game. And then you've got the experience coming in off the bench. So it's going to be an absolute war for 80 minutes, particularly from this Irish squad. On the Maori, the type 5, their mobility may have a real impact on this game if they're able to keep the ball and promote it regularly. I think from a scrummaging perspective and a set piece perspective, they'll either be able to hold their own or potentially gain ascendancy. When we look at the front rows and the ability to rotate, that's going to be really interesting. They're going to have to stand up in the back row and at the breakdown, but that's a challenge for this team. They're far improved with Cullen Grace there. And then just in terms of their experience, ability to game manage, and some of these taller players that could have a real impact, both in terms of high ball defense and high ball attack, I think that is a strength of the Māori. They've also got a number of game breakers that could really stamp their authority on this game. The likes of Ruben Love coming on the bench, off the bench, Tamaiti Williams having an impact late, and Zahn Sullivan there from the back. So, who is going to win? And what is my prediction? I'm not going to give a prediction on this one. It's far too close to call. I think it could go either ways. I mean, it could be, the X factor and sort of dynamicness of the Maori All Blacks could be too much for the Irish, or the experience here could be far too much for the Maori All Blacks. So maybe hometown factor is going to be the deciding point in this game. I don't know. Let's see. But enjoy the game, guys. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. If you have, if you could do me a favor, just hit like, subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to continue to cover this entire series. I'm so pumped for it. I'll be covering all the other various games as well in the upcoming tours, respectively, between South African tour as well as the Australian tour. So if you like this content, guys, and you want more, please subscribe to the channel, and hopefully we'll see more from you guys soon. Talk soon.